Welcome to Beyond Pipeline. We talk about how top performers win the inner game of sales. My name is Sean Abush, and I'm your host. And today we have a very special guest who does not need any introduction, Chris Ritson. Chris, thank you for coming on today. How are you?
Yeah. Firstly, yeah, thanks for having me. Right. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm doing really good. It's my son's second birthday earlier this week, so we as a family are all just coming down a little bit from that. He got a new bike, which is pretty cool. I'm excited to stop training SDRs for a little bit this weekend and start training my son on how to ride a bike, which would be pretty cool. But yeah, I'm all good. I'm all good and excited for this as well.
Yeah, bike rides, man. Bike's important. Bike's important. Well, again, thank you for coming on. There's a lot for us to talk about. We'll get into the outbound stuff. We'll get into some of the skill development, but let's start with this. How can you help? Can you go back in time and just walk through how you got into sales in the first place, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, of course. Um, so I actually started my sales career age 19 at uni. I actually started. I also started my entrepreneur career, let's say, at 19 at uni. So I started my own business. Well, it was kind of a business. I was basically, so I studied psychology and neuroscience at uni, and I'm also obsessed with sport, and I wanted to combine those two. That was like my original career goal was to be a sports psychologist. So I kind of combined my like knowledge around sport, but also like the mental side of the game with uh, creating a video course. Believe it or not, no video courses are like so hot now, and I have sales ones, but I created video course for essentially junior athletes, right? To work on the mental side of their game. Because about 15 years ago, junior athletes weren't really thinking about the mental side of their game very much. It was a really new topic. So I created a course and then tried to sell it online and had absolutely no idea how to go about it. Right? I'd never done sales before. So what did I have? I had a little bit of social media at the time. It was Facebook. And I used to cold outreach people or parents of these junior athletes on Facebook to try and sell this video course to them. And then I realized I was like, why am I selling a £50 or like $60 video course and no one's ever responding to me? This is a nightmare. Um, so then that then led me to creating like one-to-one training with programs over like course of 8 to 12 weeks with these junior athletes as well, which is like a slightly higher ticket. I actually found that easier to sell, and that was kind of because originally I was trying to sell like B2C style product as a video course, and then I moved into more of a still B2C, but almost a B2B style
Hmm.
product, which was a bit more expensive. And I was able to get straight to the decision maker basically. So that was where I started selling, was just cold outreach on Facebook, right, in Facebook chat, getting called a weirdo at like 11 p.m. at night for messaging someone's dad saying, "Hey, saw your son was it's like a taekwondo. This is actually one of my first ever customers. Was he's like Team GB Taekwondo, and like it's funny because like when I first messaged him, he was just like how do you know this? Leave me and my family alone. And then a couple of months later, one of my other customers referred him
Dude.
to me. And he came back to me and was just like, "Hey, like I've heard about this." And I was like, "You need to read the messages above," as a joke. And like, he read them and was just like, "I'm so sorry. Do you still want to work with my son?" And like, obviously, for the next like 8, 12 weeks, I went over to their house, did the sessions with his son, helped him, get into the into from juniors into actual Team GB. Um, and and yeah, well, that was like one of my like big success stories in the end. But that's where it started, was getting these rejections at like 11 p.m. at night saying, "Leave me and my family
Yeah.
alone. You're
So
really weird." And then from there, at the end of uni, I actually decided I didn't want to do that. And I wasn't. I was like literally breaking even by the time I travelled to someone's house, and charged them like £50 an hour because I had no qualifications, so I couldn't afford it. Yeah, I couldn't afford to charge loads. Charging £50 an hour. By the time I got there and back, it was I was earning like below minimum wage to do it, so it wasn't viable. I had college debt, right, or uni debt, and I decided to move to London and get a job in business development, and the rest is history. I hit, had my KPIs were literally 200 calls a day, um, from day one. Did that for about 18 months. Was the last person standing in my cohort of 9 graduates that
Damn.
started. Um, and yeah, last person standing after 9 months actually, and then left and got into SaaS, and yeah, to go as an SDR, then AE, then A leader. Then I found my real love in SDR leadership, and ended up building global teams in SDR leadership, and then the businesses that I have now, which are obviously very connected to the sales development and top of funnel.
You mentioned rejection a lot in that story, and obviously you've trained, God knows how many SDRs, and you made however many cold calls. How do you go about dealing with rejection?
Rejection. Do you know? I really, now I have experience of so much of it. It used to hurt me a lot because if I'm really open, then I have less of an ego now, but I used to have a really big ego. Like when I first started out in sales, I'd never really lost a whole lot. So like I
Yeah.
used to play a lot of sport, but the teams I played in were always very successful. And at school, I was always really successful, got great grades, and didn't have to actually try that hard to do those things. Which I'm incredibly lucky. Right, I went to a good school. I was in a good area. I grew up with people who were good at sport, and there's a lot of luck involved in that. But what that what that meant was I won a lot, which in the short term, when I reflect on that, was great. I was always like, just winning another football tournament, yeah, amazing. But what it didn't set me up for was like getting some like or tougher times. Um, so when I was first starting out in doing this business piece, um, getting rejected at 11 o'clock at night when people were calling me a weirdo, the only thing that really kept me in the game was my own ego, was because I didn't want to tell anyone that I'd failed, because no one that I knew in my circle knew me as someone that failed. But that wasn't often because of me. It was because of the people that I was, almost accidentally surrounded by. But when I was actually, by myself building this up, this business, or when I was by myself as an individual contributor, I was in a completely alien situation. I wasn't in a good team anymore that I could blend in and just keep winning, right? So,
Mm.
or like it didn't come that naturally to me. Like I, hadn't done it before or whatever. I couldn't ride the wave of other people's success. So, yeah, like that was really really difficult. When I look back on it now, what kept me in the game was two things. One was definitely my own ego, and not being able to admit defeat to anyone, which is a stupid thing in many ways, but it absolutely kept me in the game. Sometimes when things got really ugly for me, but like personally, I'd say the second thing was I actually loved what I did. Weirdly enough, right? I loved doing the 200 cold calls a day. I know that sounds nuts, but I loved doing it. And yeah, it was hard sometimes, and a bit, mentally like, why do I have a degree? What's the point, right? And things like that. Or I was tired or hungover or whatever. But that's the second thing that kept me in the game, and is like I was passionate about what I was doing. But again, I was lucky because I had accidentally found sales. Right, I chose my first sales job because it paid more than all of my housemates at uni, and I wanted to just beat them on salary because that's what I thought was the most important thing in life. Right, but I know loads of salespeople who've got into sales now. SDRs are 35 first sales job, as an example, and they just haven't been as lucky as I was. I chose sales at 21. They chose sales at 35. Right, they took them 14 years to work out that that's where they needed or wanted to be. For me, I just took a random guess and I got lucky with that guess. So yeah, like I think rejection was easier for me because I liked what I did and I was passionate about it. and that's what kept me in the game. My my thing for everyone else, or my like learning would always be, or teaching for anyone else, or advice would be, if you're not super passionate about what you're doing, that's when it's okay to quit, right? If you don't love what you're doing. But remember, try not to, distinguish like love and hate too easily. Give it a little bit of a chance first.
I feel like too what you're sharing is, hey, it sounded like you were on some really good teams. Things were a bit easier to win, and so you didn't face rejection a lot. But then when you went on your own, you had a lot more rejection, and your ego kept you in it. You loved what you're doing, so that helped. I feel like we're in and feel. Tell me if you think I'm not seeing it correctly. I feel like we're in an analogous time right now in SaaS where things were a lot easier about from the last decade, let's call it. Money was flowing, and now all of a sudden, people were getting laid off. Things are generally harder, right? It's not an excuse, but they're just generally harder. It is what it is. And I think people are kind of scratching their head. They're laid off or they're not performing how they used to, and now they're sitting here going, "What do I do?" Um, if you do think that that's the case, what advice do you have? I'm sure you have SDRs coming to you with that with some similar talk track. Like, what advice do you have for people in that position that are really struggling to perform? Maybe just got laid off, feel like things are just really hard. Like, what? How would you advise them?
So I've been there before, right? Um, and it is hard for sure. I think the first thing from experience is the best exercise that I've ever personally done, and I do this regularly anyway. Now, is I'll write down what did I enjoy about my previous role, what did I not about my previous role, because that's really what I'm trying to work out. Right, is I'm trying to work out what I've enjoyed and what I haven't enjoyed, so then in my next role I can go and do more of the stuff that I've enjoyed. That's the first reflection that I encourage anyone to think about. Most people, we die, something bad happens, we feel bad, and what do? We try and get rid of that feeling immediately by jumping straight into something else. It's exactly the same as what most SDRs do each week, right? Let's imagine last week you do 500 calls, you book no meetings. What do you do this week? You don't think about 500 calls, you want to get that out of your mind. You just start doing more calls. And what happens? History probably repeats itself. So take this as an opportunity, kind of like, the world saying to you, just take a little bit of a break and give yourself an hour to work out, a couple of hours to work out what you liked, what you didn't like, and then go and find roles like you would if you're an SDR, find accounts or a list of accounts that match what you would enjoy and what you like, right? That's for the job seekers of the world. That's got to be the starting point, because you're not going to go and achieve what you want to achieve. You're not going to go and be successful if you just keep repeating the same mistakes that you've made every time, where you just randomly pick a job because it's the highest salary, and then your manager's a complete ass to you all the time, and you end up kind of hating what you're doing, or you get no training and you never get better, or whatever. So go and work out what you enjoy. I think for people where it absolutely is harder to sell, and it is harder to book meetings. Like, remember this is compared to 2020. I did a workshop recently on this with a team, and compared to 2020, you've got 2.1x less companies in market, but you've also got on LinkedIn over 2x the amount of SDRs that are actually on LinkedIn, right? With job title of SDR / sales development, BDR reps, right? And those SDRs are sending over 50% more messages. So you've got over 2 times as much competition, sending over 50% more stuff to 2.1x less people in market. Of course, that's going to be harder, right? So your question really is like, how can you stand out from other people? Well, if there are more people, then and there's less people in market. So how do you beat your competition? Your competition is not the other products that you're competing against. It's other salespeople
who you're competing for the attention of your prospects. If you're an SDR and AE booking pipeline, it's not about your product. No one cares about that at this stage in the sales process, most likely. What they care about is who they're going to give their attention to within that moment. So focus on the prospect from a psychology, or prospects from a psychology perspective. Focus on winning their attention. You're not going to win their attention with automated messages. You're certainly not going to keep it. So think about how you can win attention, and this is where that methodology around sometimes a little bit less is a lot more, right? Less messages, more attention, right? Rather than more messages, less attention. So think about it that way as a salesperson, as opposed to just more is always more, right? And this is something I've been saying a lot this year: is sales is a numbers game, but the numbers are probabilities. Every account in your list has a
Yeah.
different probability that it will close as revenue or it will be booked as a meeting. Your job every day is to find the ones with the highest probabilities. It's to walk into the casino in Vegas. Every table is an account, right? The job is to find the tables where the probabilities of good cards are, and then going playing in those tables and staying in those tables for long enough for those good cards to come, right? And that's the combo. That is the combo. And I actually wrote a newsletter on this last week, but Warren Buffett is and he actually started in sales, funnily enough, selling securities out in the Midwest. A bit of a fun fact. That's like his first job. But he's got a 3-step model for investments, and obviously he's best investor probably ever, most renowned. He's got a 3-step process for choosing an investment he knows will win. And that 3-step model is he takes a long time over choosing his list of investments from all his potential opportunities. He then goes all in on that. And then when the market fluctuates, he keeps his money in the game, in the investment. He knows the journey is not linear to success. That's his 3-step model. How is that applicable to salespeople? Well, rather than having a massive list where you just spread your bets and invest in every account, pick the right ones. Then, when you pick them, go all in on amazing messaging and super creative and whatever. And then, when you get your first few rejections at those accounts, aka the market's going like this, you've invested in Coca-Cola and it's just dipped or whatever. You invested your time into trying to break into Coca-Cola as booking a meeting. You got a no. Keep going in that account for longer than anyone else is willing to go. Right? That's the juice, that 3-step model.
That was the best I've ever heard someone break that down. I totally agree with you. And it took me a while to learn that. I've been outbounding for probably 4 or 5 straight years. And it wasn't until about middle year 4 that I was like, oh, this game's wrong. Essentially, to break it down to make sure that I understand for the audience, it's one, identify like what is a high probability account based off your ideal customer profile. If you don't know that, go talk to your customers or read job descriptions, whatever. Two is then once you know that, high quality messaging to those few accounts. And then 3 is stick with those accounts, even if they initially say no, find a back door, whatever it takes.
Yeah. It's you like, if you want to take that up a notch, a lot of the people that say no to you, around 30%, they're actually saying not right now, just in a different tone,
Way. Yep.
right? A different way. And the big part of the job from a business developer's perspective, that huge part is being able to identify which no's are not right nows, because then you're able to go and build. If you've got not right now, that's someone that you can go and build a relationship with. One of the things that I've always disagreed with in sales was this: my first ever manager used to say, Chris, the second best answer you can get in sales is no. And I was always like, well, when I was doing this business thing at uni, I got a load of not right nows and I kept messaging them over a period of time, and some of them turned into a yes. So like, yeah, I hear you, like no's good. At least you got an answer, but I'd rather have a meeting for the future, or a prospective client for the future, that if I do well enough at nurturing them, right? And that's the skill, is the nurture piece. If I do well enough at nurturing them, then I walk into October, November, December, and I'm not starting on zero. And that's one of the biggest things that I get, questions that I get from people is, how can I get rid of this feeling of starting at zero every single month? Everyone's going to do that next week, right? They're going to be pushing their quotas super hard in SDR teams today and tomorrow, and basically trying to rinse their pipeline. And then Monday it's going to start to zero again, and they'll just repeat the same stress cycle where it's like zero, oh my goodness, I'm really stressed, I've got nothing. And then it's like, cool, it's the first week, so whatever. And then it's like shoots up again to super stressed. But what I used to teach my teams and all of my reps was, okay, how can you convert this no into figuring out whether it's a no or a not right now? And then once they've got the not right now, let's work on building that relationship with them via content over this period of time. Build trust in the brand, build trust in you, most importantly, as the seller. So when it gets to October, November, December, what are you walking into that month with? Well, you're walking in with like an account that you're really confident is going to be a meeting, and not just a meeting, an opportunity, not just an opportunity, but probably fast moving pipeline for your AE. So what's your AE going to think? I love my SDR. What's your AE going to say to their manager? I love my SDR. What's that manager going to think? That SDR's class. Or what's that they're going to say to the CRO? This SDR is booking all of these meetings that turn into revenue. What's going to happen? You're going to get promoted as the SDR. And that's the cycle of events that actually most SDRs, just by thinking that a no or multiple no's that they're getting are just no's, they're missing out on accelerating their journey to what actually they really want, which is these promotions and pay rises. It's really funny how it works.
What makes people not able to see that? Because it is quite obvious, and it's obvious to me too. I agree with you on this. What makes people not able to see that?
Incentive bias. So you might have come across this before. It's a psychological concept, but going back to my uni roots studying psychology, right? But yes, incentive bias. So if as an SDR, you've got a monthly quota. That monthly quota is what your manager is putting pressure on you to hit. But that monthly quota is also associated not just to the pressure and getting them off your back, it's associated to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like money, like being able to pay for your shelter, your accommodation, bills, nice food, all these shorter term things that you need, that are your immediate stresses in life, right? And that collectively adds up into this sort of incentive bias. And when you think about how that operationalizes itself on the sales floor, it operationalizes itself as, manifests as, I'm on a cold call, the prospect has just said not interested, I'm just going to put the phone down, rather than prospect saying not interested, you saying not interested, question mark, maybe a little bit of mirroring or whatever. Right. And they say, I'm not interested because our budgets don't renew until the end of October. Okay. So would that mean that November would be a better time for us to pick things up? Right. Yeah, November. Okay. Can you tell me what's going to change between now and then, apart from the budgets that would make this point of interest? This is what's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. Great. So what we'll do then is I'll book us in for November. Right. But that most 90% of SDRs have already put the phone down and they're on to the next dial for someone to say not interested, phone down. The best SDRs, the 10%, they're still on the call booking the meeting for November, and then they're moving on to the next one, booking the meeting for October, and then they're moving on to their nurtures and nurturing them, right, and building the relationship. It's just quite hard to convey on LinkedIn. So when everyone bangs on about build relationships, what does that mean? Well, what that means is nurturing someone, starting a conversation, and then being able to continue that conversation over a long period of time. And what most SDRs also don't realize is that's one of the single most important skills that an AE has, is the ability to work with an account over a long period of time and multiple people at it, maintain the relationship, and keep the person, essentially, or people, on track with why the hell they're buying this thing in the first place. right? And that's the switch up that I'd love more and more SDRs to make, and used to really drill into my teams and do and talk about in all my live training programs is you're not living in a binary world as an SDR in a yes no environment. You're living, in, or you should be trying to live in your prospects environment, which is there's three options. It's yes, no, and for 30% ish of them, it's not right now.
I I think that's gonna, if someone does actually action that, which I definitely will continue to action that and actually use some things you just taught me. Like, I think that's going to be a big unlock for a lot of people, is because that is a longer term focus. And I've seen, I can even speak to this. I have a big account. I have several big accounts that are in deal flight right now. We've docs out. Took 6 months. Took 6 months off a cold call. And then it took 6 months. I nurtured them a little bit. 4 months later, they came in, 2 month sales cycle. Like,
I actually learned this skill myself when I was an AE. So um, it was, I'd have the initial disco call, and then you you kind of lose it a little bit. But it was, a lot of the time it was because timing was off. But all I did with all of those accounts was just put consistent effort into making sure that I gave them content that was useful and most importantly on problem with, right. And this is the other mistake, right, is like it's all well and good us booking in these meetings for November, December, January, whatever, but if you then start sending them, oh, join our webinar on construction companies, like, well, I'm in FS, like, why would I join that, right? It's like that's an example of just sending content for the sake of sending content. So there's two things going on here that you need to teach the reps, or if you're a rep and you're listening to this, is teach yourself, is learn to identify who is a no and who is a not right now, and then go and book the not right nows for the future. And then when you book them, work on and think about the content journey that you send them down that builds trust in you and your brand. And remember, less is going to be more attention that you want from them. Read your case studies, all this stuff. You're going to need to send them less, less automation when you're nurturing them. It's got to be almost this one-to-one relationship between you and them, right, from that first point of contact until the next point. That's what's going to keep you standing out and winning their attention over 3-6 months. That's actually the hard thing to do, right? Because you got other salespeople competing for their time in that time frame as well.
yeah, it is a differentiator, though. I can share from my own experience. First 3 years outbounding, I was very much like yes, no, keep moving. And when the big deals started coming, was because I was nurturing. So I can definitely attest to this. I have not been able to articulate like you have, but I can attest to the
Yeah,
ramifications of it.
honestly, I think it's a combo of what you're saying as well, right? Where it's yes, no, not right now, keep moving. Yes, no, not right now, keep moving. That was the only addition that we used to train the teams and the reps so hard. I still do now with the team training stuff that I do, but is train the reps super hard on is yes is great, right? 10% of your accounts roughly going to be in market. So when you send them a good message, you've got a chance of booking the meeting if you send them a good enough message. 30% if you send them a good enough message and probably handle an objection or two, right? Where they first up say no, you'll be able to turn them into a not right now, or you'll be able to figure out that they're actually not right now. For the 60%, they're probably a no, and that's okay that you found that out. But you're never going to get the yeses or the not right nows if you send everyone the same stuff and the bad messages, basically, right? Because it's all well and good having good accounts, but you gotta mix that with a good message as well. I actually it's interesting we're talking about this so much, because one of the things, and this is actually writing about, I was actually writing about it, goes out tomorrow, is one of the things that I used to do with reps is it's called the 24-hour one meeting challenge, right? And it's not actually about getting the meeting, itself, it's about getting the reps to take a lot of action really, really quickly. And the rep, and basically the way that it works is just like go find, step one, find some, your top 10 accounts. Step two, construct a good message. Step three, like start executing on sending that message. Step four, follow up, and then review your performance. And you got 24 hours to do it, right? But it drives the reps to think about, I've only got 24 hours, which means I don't have 100 accounts. I need to just pick my top 10. I don't have loads and loads of messages. I need to just write my best ones, right? And what you end up with more often than not is reps booking 1, 2, 3 meetings because they pick the best ones rather than,
focus.
and they focus. They're like, I've got 24 hours. But the most important thing isn't even the meetings. It's actually the reps start to build this muscle of stopping procrastination and just doing stuff and start, taking action on moving the needle. And that's a real muscle in itself that most reps don't actually have. They're planning all the time, researching, and there's a time and a place for that. And it's not that they're not bad. It's not that they're bad things. It's just that they don't help build that muscle of take, consistent action towards a certain goal.
How have you built that muscle within yourself? Because at least in my experience, I've also had to train that muscle. I'm a very good planner. I can strategize with some of the best of them, barring my own ignorance. And so now it's like you
Some
get
folks,
building the action is so important.
yeah. So two things. So one, I used to run a team. I used to have teams out in San Francisco, and we did this exercise once where it was all about figuring out where we got our energy as like a work as a professional. For me, I get my energy that I would be described as one of four answers. You can be a combo as well, but I was like extreme high execute, where like basically I love a list. Just give me a list and I'll just be like boom, 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 boom. And I feel good that I've smashed through that list. The downside is I tread on people's toes as I'm moving. I'm almost like a bull in a china
As
shop,
do
like
I.
so. And but it really helped me because it allowed me to also understand a lot of my team that used to frustrate me. Some of them would be like taking ages over things. And these people would be called, like they would basically get their energy because they were like highly analytical people. They'd like to look at a problem, think about the problem and all the different ways they could approach it and then get started with it. Whereas me, it's like, give me a problem. I'm like, just do that. And I just do it. Right. So that was how I used to, like, how I learned that bit. I think the second thing was I also did this test, right? It's called the Colbier test, and I got it's like over a 9 out of 10. It's like a 9.7 or something on the scale for having a bias towards action, right? And I just was kind of like off the charts on that. So I'm lucky in the respect that that was my natural bias is towards action, but the downside is sometimes and I think that sits really well with sales, and it sits really well with sales-based roles. It sits really well with entrepreneurship and stuff like that. But if that's not you, that doesn't mean that you can't be successful, because where I used to go wrong when I first started was I would just be like, give me that list of accounts and I'll smash through it. Now it's give me that list of accounts and I'm going to smash through working out which ones are the highest probabilities. So, but my previous bias was give me that list of 100 accounts and I'm going to call everyone now, right? Whereas I'm changing it slightly to, yes, it's all about the action, but what's the right action that I need to take?
Yeah, and I think that's the more because I've had to learn that too. Like, what's the balance between let's get strategic and pick the top of those accounts, probably top 10 to maybe 20, and then go act versus just running through the
Yeah,
100
and it's
accounts.
not. Yeah, man, and it's. I think this is a really interesting thing, and a lot of reps give me this feedback, and always have. And I felt it myself. Is just because I haven't done 200 calls today doesn't mean that I've had a bad day, and I really have that. I still have that now, in a lot of different ways. Is like just because I haven't done like a certain milestone, specific numbers and things like that of things, doesn't mean that it's been a really, it's been a bad day, or I've not been productive, or whatever. And yeah, that's taken me a really long time to not beat myself up over,
Mhm.
and to value other activities that are less quantitative,
Mhm.
basically. So yeah, I think if you're in that position where you get to the end of the day sometimes and you, yeah, oh, I haven't done 200 calls today, I've had a terrible day, then you go and, something that helped me is you just used to write down three, and this is something that I still do today. I'll do it probably after this call, right? Not after this call, but in about an hour. So it's like, three things that were good for today, three things that were not so good about my day. And that just used, 5 minutes. It's a 5 minute activity. And the magic happens when you you've just taken 5 minutes to reflect on working your ass off probably that day,
Mhm.
and you stop repeating those mistakes that you make the next day, but you start noticing yourself doubling down even more on the things that are doing well and working for you. But most reps don't do that, right? It's like, make the last call, right, laptop down, I'm out of here. But just like, laptop down, 5 minutes is all I would say. 25 minutes a week, and honestly, it changed it changed the game for me. I was lucky enough to be introduced to it in my first sales role on my first day. Um, but it was probably the biggest reason why I was able to stay in the game and be successful relatively quickly in sales. Um, just because I'd learned how to reflect on stuff that I'd done well, but also stuff that I'd done badly, and let it go.
Yeah, and it sounds like your ability to evolve your process based on like feedback from the outside world is really key to then to you just learning and growing within sales and obviously now your overall business.
Honestly, it's kind of, it's like, I've definitely say that I haven't always been as open. I used to push back a lot more when I was younger and had a bigger ego. But when I like actually really opened myself up to people, um, the learning curve was mad for me. Where when I realized that I needed to go first and open up, and then in turn they would, or I give them something and in turn they would, right? And that just day-to-day relationship with as many people as possible, right? Every day, then the learning curve that I got in return from it was actually what I really wanted. I was saying things like, I want a promotion, I want these skills, but that was kind of this, that was the cheat code, was drop the ego, give as much as you can. In return, it's likely that you will get something, even if it's not immediate. And the learning curve goes like that. It was kind of, it's just like, it's like with, with my team a lot. When I changed from, trying to be this sort of cavalier leader, like, go go go, to here's how I'm feeling, right? We've got 2 days to go this month. It's August, summer, it's hard. I feel stressed. I'm worried about the number. I'm worried about my number. How are you feeling? Right. And then they're like, oh, I'm really, really worried. But if I just came in and was just like, oh, we're going to crush it, like, come on, let's go, go, go. I'm feeling amazing. But the reps never opened up, never gave me like actually what
Yeah.
was going on, and in their worlds or anything like that. But when the magic really happened, not just with reps, with what I used to call like my first team, which was the leadership team. When I was like that in the leadership rooms, I was like, guys, this is how I feel. And everyone was always like, wow, this person's vulnerable. I remember doing it in the States specifically, and um, and and no one had really done it in the team before. And I was like, I'm just going to say how I really feel about everything. Like, backs are against the walls. Like, feel shit. Um, and we just come off our worst quarter ever or something like that. And people opened up, and everyone had probably the best, most productive conversation as a leadership team that we'd ever had. And we all came together afterwards, right? And we're like, even now we still speak about that conversation and those conversations as when we really felt like we got to know each other as leaders, rather than the bullshit that we always talk about, where like, yeah, how are you feeling? Yeah, good. You? Good. No, I feel better than good. No, I feel better than good. And like, I feel great. Like I'm super strong. It's just like, it's not reality. Like, not all the time anyway.
Yeah, it sounds like you opening up gave other people permission to open up, which I totally feel. There's a lot that you said there that resonated that we could spend hours on because I've gone through I'm going through some of that, especially just like letting go of the ego and just like learn and just man that was killer. So thank you.
It's so hard. Do you know what? It's so
It's
hard.
hard, dude. It's
Do you know
hard.
what the funniest thing is? My wife is a psychologist and therapist, right? And I hear her all the time on calls with patients. And I heard her all the time on calls with patients. And I studied psychology. I know the importance of opening up and talking. It took me like 6 years to do it myself in a professional environment, right? It's scary. We kind of wear a mask a lot of the time. And that's also, where one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing now, and is, first and foremost is I wanted to help more, like I genuinely have a love for it and get a kick from helping top of funnel, people working top of funnel. Like that's what I get a kick for, and I wanted to do more than just helping one business at a time, one group of people at a time doing that. But the other thing was is like being your own boss kind of gives you the permission to um not wear a mask, that you have no one to wear a mask for, right? And as much as sometimes I want to do that for my wife, it's like, well, you know me anyway, so it's all good.
I there's a lot that you mentioned there that I resonate with because I do feel like the corporate mask is so common. Yeah, I think a lot of people can benefit from just being a little bit more open. The last segment I want to cover is I know we got to get you out of here pretty soon. Is you have a great, there's so many things we can cover. God, all right, you have a great story of starting your own business and just like we talked about it of transitioning from corporate life into starting your own business. What were some of the things that you wanted to change moving from corporate life to starting your own business, and how would you go about making those changes and building that within your current work style today?
Yeah, so honestly, it goes back to that. What I'm obsessed, or always have been obsessed with, this a model that my dad taught me about life, right? Where um he used to say, work out what you enjoy, and then when you enjoy it, you'll do more of it. And then when you do more of it, you'll be better at it, and you'll get all of the extrinsic things that you want, like money, promotions, pay rises, all that stuff. And obviously at the time I was like, shut up, Dad, like I'm just gonna get pay rises and money. So whatever. But yeah, I only told him recently that I actually implemented that model. But my view on a career is first and foremost, this isn't my saying, I stole it off a friend, is uh, you are the CEO of your own career. Everyone is a CEO. They are the CEO of their own career. Every day you are making a decision to stay or leave your job, or to work hard, or to take your foot off the gas. Like, you are the CEO, that you're making every decision. The book starts and stops with you in terms of your career and where you get to. The and that's really important, for like really important like place to start. Because for me, like when I think about the model that my dad taught me, and the CEO thing, like as a combination, well, if the CEO thing is like guiding you on where or how you make what you make decisions on, and owning it, and the model is like focus on enjoyment first. Everything over the last 10 years, before I even stopped working in corporate and built my own business, was a collective group of decisions that led me to that point. So if I go back to when I was I started as an SDR and took a job in sales based on cash. That was a pure luck decision that I enjoyed. That I learned it. I didn't didn't choose it because of enjoyment, but I got lucky. The next part was I went and became an SDR at a SaaS company. The decision was I stayed in sales because I enjoyed it, right? And I went to a startup because I didn't like working in a corporate or a big environment. So I started making my decisions as the CEO of my career on what I enjoyed. That then led me to getting promoted to AE because I enjoyed it. And then from there, I chose leadership over AE because I enjoyed helping people more. So I went for the enjoyment thing again, even though it paid less. Then from leading AEs, I led SDRs. People call me crazy. I chose a job that was paying 12 grand less a year, right? My answer to them when they said, why are you doing that? AEs are, it's all about AEs. SDRs are weird. I was like, but I just enjoy this more. So I'm going to do it more. It'll pay back in the future. And again, enjoyment, right? Did the role, worked hard, got the pay rises. And that led me to a point. I did that 3 times. And then I was like, all right, well, what do I enjoy the most? Well, I enjoy training, enabling, working, building something. What do I not enjoy? I don't enjoy having a boss. Right. So I'd got to that
Me
point
too.
in my life where like I just got to that point. And when you don't enjoy having a boss, there really is only one way to go. And that it got me to that point. And so my commitment was if I'm the CEO of my own career and I need to choose something that I enjoy or is going to help me enjoy life and enjoy my journey, then I need to go down this entrepreneurship route. So my thing that I always say to people is whilst it sounds really sexy to say, and I absolutely do say it sometimes, is quit my 100 and whatever K SDR job, 180K SDR director job, 12 days after my son was born to go and do this business. Well, really, it was a collective decision that had got me to that point over the course of like 8-10 years in career management. And the career management was deliberately choosing what I enjoyed by reflecting on what I enjoyed, what I didn't enjoy, and then making very deliberate decisions to pursue what I enjoyed. And sometimes in the short term, that meant I chose less money. And that meant that I chose more pain, right? And, lived in a worse flat. Like I did. I lived in a worse flat than I could have afforded to, right? But it wasn't about those things. Those things, were part of or became part of the journey later. They're just hard to commit to in the short term. But that model that my dad gave me was the most significant, but only became significant when I combined it with ownership and the CEO of my own career mentality. Those two things working in tandem also meant that when I did F it up, and I have and reflected on it, I was able to take ownership for it rather than blaming everything else. It was like
Dude.
that
Man,
was
that
it.
could be a whole nother podcast episode. Shit. Yeah. Oh,
That
that's so good.
and that
Yeah.
that was the combo. But I was lucky. I was honestly, again, I go back to this luck element. I'm I'm an incredibly lucky person. I didn't like the word luck, but I have been incredibly fortunate, incredibly lucky, to be just told those things, right, by people. Right? Most people, never told those things, they don't have, and therefore they're never able to have those realizations. I've worked with great people who have helped me along the way when I've struggled. And I failed many times. I've been lucky enough to be doing something that I love enough to keep me in the game when it gets a bit sore and painful. So that's an important thing for me and also for everyone to remember is like, you miss your quota this August, right, or this quarter, then there's someone out there probably in a worse position than you. We lose our job, we get laid off, and I've happened to me before. There will be someone out there in a worse position. Take the time to reflect on what you enjoyed, and then own your part in whatever happened, right? And then look and then put it behind you and move on. But make deliberate decisions that design
Yeah,
things
I like
deliberately.
that CEO mentality. And it's you're accountable and follow what you enjoy. That's just like
You
Oof,
don't need to
dude.
be. Yeah, it was all about this thing about you don't need to be you're not just a CEO because you run a company, right? Like, I actually deliberately don't call myself CEO of my own company because it's a one person company, so it kind of be a bit weird. I'm the CEO of myself, but I think everyone is the CEO of their own career, right? Because their careers it's what 40, 45 years for most people. I think retirement age in the States is actually later than Europe, right? And North America. So it's like you got a lot. It's a long road. But the key is to try and not make the same mistakes all the time. The antidote is reflect on what you enjoy and do more of that.
Dude, that's absolutely fire. Yeah, thank you for that. Where can as we wrap up, where can people find you and learn more about you and all the great work you're doing?
Yeah, so I obviously LinkedIn, right? If LinkedIn's not your thing,
Great,
then
great LinkedIn content, by the way. Great
thank
LinkedIn
you. I
content.
appreciate it. I just like writing, to be honest. But yeah, LinkedIn's is where I am most days. That's always a great place, I'd say, to start. Like free content, get to know me. I post a lot about like me as a person too, and my values. Which I think is an important place to start in any relationship, right? Like online or in person. What's the values and what do you care about? And then I think the other part, the other thing is if you want to take it up a level is and get all the like free guides and all that sort of stuff step by steps. Then have a newsletter that that goes out once a week. It's a free guide essentially, or step by step play on learning top of funnel, learning sales. That's my real belief is as a trainer, as a enablement enthusiast anyway, and coach, is step by step methods are just how people learn, but not just learn, retain information. Um, so I write a lot of just breakdown step by steps, tutorials, those sort of things for obviously for free. Right.
Awesome. And where can they find your paid stuff? I know you have a course, stuff like that.
Yeah, just head over to you can find all my stuff paid free at chrisritson.xyz.
Okay, cool. I highly recommend the content. I read it for outbound stuff, mindset, skill development too, which we did not get into as much, but you have absolute fire there. So, with that being said, the final question, I think you've already said it, but I will ask it. If there's one piece of advice you had to give an AE or an SDR who wants to grow in their career, feels like they're struggling, they couldn't listen to this episode. They can only listen to what you're about to say next. What would be the one piece of advice that you would have for them?
If they want to grow in their career, if you want to one piece of advice that's
One piece
so
of advice, if they're struggling and they want to grow in their career, or maybe they're doing well, but they want to find a way to have a more fulfilled career that they enjoy and that they perform well in, what would be the one piece of advice?
so go and find someone that does not have an emotional connection to you, but is in the position that you want to be next. So this is something that I've done religiously over my career is go and seek people out and who are in the next place that I want to be in.
Mhm.
What that has allowed me to do is move from the state of mind where I have like informed optimism about that
Ah,
role,
yeah.
where I understand that is this actually for me or not before I make the decision, right? If it's and some people call them mentors. Like you can call them mentors. I think mentorship is actually it's more of a consistent over time piece, but this is almost like a coach style environment, right? Where like you start to understand whether the next step that you believe you want is actually a good fit for you, right? That's the first step before you go and invest. And everyone else will tell you go and learn the skills. And I'll tell you that sometimes too, but there's a place to go and invest in skills. Skills take a really long time to develop. So you got to make sure that you're investing your time into the skills that are going to get you to somewhere you really want to be. Go back to the Warren Buffett thing of investing in certain accounts. He wants an account or he wants an investment opportunity in his portfolio. It's going to pay back loads and loads of cash. So the first thing that he's doing is he's not investing in the business. He's going and figuring out which of those businesses he should be investing in. So if you want to be an AE, ask yourself the question, why do I not want to be a CSM? Why do I not want to be in marketing? If the answer is because I want to earn more money, then I implore you to go and look deeper at yourself and really why you want that and what's going to keep you in the game when you don't make any commission or any money. They're the sort of, these anti-questions. Rather than ask yourself, why do I want it? Ask yourself, like, what's going to keep me in the game? Because I promise you, and I'll finish with this is I once hired an Olympic athlete and she won 2 silver medals at Rio. And I asked her like, how did you get to that level? And she was just like, well, I basically just she said it in more words, but I basically just loved staring at the bottom of a swimming pool for longer than anyone else working on my strokes. Right? Like, what's going to keep you in the game when you're in a lot of pain and you're just staring at the bottom of the swimming pool, right? Or staring at your phone thinking, oh my God, there's only one way to get to quota, and that's to cold call these people.
Strangers, yeah.
So, do it for the love of it, but start by figuring out what you believe you will love. And when you mess it up, when you mess up your decision, reflect on it, right? Like, think about it. Why did you mess it up? And I promise you, it won't be your manager. It won't be your lack of training. It'll be because you chose to work for that manager, or you chose not to go and do external training, or it's because see where I'm flipping these things to taking ownership.
Yeah, people are accountable. Yeah, totally.
So yeah, going back to that, that CEO of your own career piece. But
yeah, find what you enjoy and then go learn the skills, take accountability for when you mess up. I think those are some great messages, man.
When you've never done a role before, like if you've never been an AE before, you don't know if you're going to love it, right? But you've got to make sure that your hypothesis at least has some sort of like validation behind it that's better than, I think I like money. Well, most people would ideally be earning $1 million a year if you ask them. I don't think there's many people who would say no to it. There will be some, but a lot of people won't, right? But like, search a bit deeper within yourself, right, to figure that out.
Awesome. Chris, dude, thank you. I wish I had 5 hours to talk more about more stuff with you, from skill development to values to sales, everything between. So thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. Really, really grateful for you and your content. For those of you listening, give this guy a follow. Give this guy, follow his content. He's amazing. And share this podcast too. I hope you liked it. If you didn't, hit me up. You know where to find me. Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you again soon.
See you
Chris.
later.